Burnout is when we experience mental, emotional, and or physical collapse. It's basically our body's way of forcing us to take a break. And unfortunately, it tends to happen at the most inconvenient times, right? You are listening to the WELLthy Woman Podcast, and I am your host, business coach, and wellness mentor, Dr. Michelle. And my mission is to teach conscientious women entrepreneurs how to create a life full of health and wealth from the inside out. In this podcast, you'll learn how to elevate your health and implement business strategies so you can awaken your inner power, show up more confidently, and focus on what really matters. Sharing your gifts, better serving your clients, and showing up even more for the people you love. This is today's successful woman, the WELLthy Woman. Hey there, and welcome back to the WELLthy Woman Podcast. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the yin and yang of hustle. And yes, it's pronounced yang, not yang, if you care about that kind of stuff. But regardless, in alignment with the theme of Nourish and Restore, today I'll be talking about the important balance between hustle and downtime and how that relates to your health and what that looks like in real life when you're running a business. My hope is that you walk away feeling like you have the tools you need to prevent burnout. So first off, let's talk about balance. Now, a lot of women say that they're striving for work-life balance, and I definitely get that sentiment. But as a woman, as a business owner, as a partner, as a mother, as a sister or a daughter, it can be really freaking hard to create clearly delineated boundaries. And I am here to tell you that that's okay most of the time. Now, I'm not giving you an excuse to not take care of yourself and your needs and your wants and your desires by any means. But in contrast, I'm encouraging you to stop striving for something that might not be attainable, at least in this moment in time, because it might be causing you more stress than it's worth. So instead, try focusing more on work-life integration as opposed to balance, because, balance kind of indicates this 50-50 scenario, right? If you think about the yin and yang symbol, which is also called a taiji, it's completely balanced, right? But it's also in motion, which, is represented by that S curve, that like curved line you see in the center. It looks like it's kind of swirling, right? And if you look at the symbol, there's also these small little eyes or dots of the opposite color embedded on each side. And that represents that there's a little yin in the yang and a little yang in the yin, right? It's not totally separated. So in Chinese medicine, this is called dynamic equilibrium. And it's really this give and take. It's not always 50-50. It might be 90-10 sometimes, or 60-40, right? So what we need to do is allow for that flow and perhaps not create a 50-50 balance each and every day, but take a step back, a more macroscopic view, and maybe look at the entire week or the entire month and try to make that balance out. So why is this important? So the obvious reason is because we don't want to burn out, right? If we keep going and going and going, we run the risk of crashing and burning and potentially losing a lot of what we've been working so hard towards, right? Our success, our impact, our freedom, right? So what is burnout and how does that even happen? So burnout is when we experience mental, emotional, and or physical collapse. It's basically our body's way of forcing us to take a break. And unfortunately, it tends to happen at the most inconvenient times, right? It happens in the middle of a launch. It happens the week before an event, during the 1 week we take off for vacation. And if we don't have the support that we need, if we don't have the reserves that we need, it can last for days, if not weeks sometimes. So this burnout has a lot to do with our adrenal glands, which I'll be covering extensively this month in a later episode. I'm going to talk about specialized testing to see where you are on that spectrum of burnout and how to take steps to restore your adrenal health and your stress response. So the adrenal glands produce our major stress hormones and stress response, which is largely dependent on cortisol. And you can think of that as jet fuel. And when you think of jet fuel, you can imagine how many resources are burned up in the process of using it, right? Our body literally needs to recruit nutrients, vitamins, minerals, proteins, and other energy sources to keep it burning. But we only have so much, right? Now, stress is not all bad, right? We need stress to grow and to change and to travel and to learn. And our body also needs stress to mount appropriate responses to things like injury or illness. The thing is, our lifestyles and the demands we place on ourselves lead to chronic or long-term stress, and that lingers day in and day out, right? Constantly using up your jet fuel and the resources that your body could be using for other things, right? Instead, ideally, we would have just like this brief experience, this brief burn with a quick burst of fuel, right? And then move on. So in the wild, just to give you an example, it would be something like a gazelle at a watering hole. Right? If there's a lion present and on the hunt, the gazelle perks up, it stresses, right? It makes the appropriate maneuvers to escape with their jet fuel. And then once the lion is gone, the gazelle goes right back to the watering hole like it's no big deal, right? It's not like the gazelle never goes back to the watering hole with this constant underlying fear that the lion might come back. It does what it needs to do, and then it moves on. Okay? But when we get stuck in that stress response where our fuel is constantly being tapped, which is the case for most of the high-level women that I work with, we're depleting our fuel at a super, super fast rate. And we need to flip that switch off, get out of that fight, flight, or freeze mode, the sympathetic nervous system, right? And tap into our rest, digest, and restore mode, right? The parasympathetic nervous system. That way we can reserve our fuel stores, we can replenish the nutrients that we've been depleting, and have resources to pull from when we need them most. Okay? So how do we nourish and restore those adrenal glands and the fuel that they provide? So the number one way, like hands down, is to rest. Now, I'm not saying you have to be lazy or unproductive, for endless hours of the day. This just means that you need to be conscientious of making that switch, ideally on a daily basis. And the amount of time that you dedicate to that switch is going to vary from day to day because our daily demands vary, right? So like you, I'm super busy, right? I pride myself on my productivity. I always have a lot of spinning plates, and I always have unexpected things pop up. This is the life of an entrepreneur, right? So to find that integration and overall balance, you need to first see the value in restoration and rejuvenation and mark it down as a priority. And this can be kind of hard because it's not necessarily one of those instant gratification things, right? It's time you need to set aside to preserve your future health. And that long-term vision can be really tricky to grasp, right? So I will say from experience that by taking time for myself, even if I only have 5 or 10 minutes in the morning to meditate or stretch or journal, this conscious choice and this embodied action helps me to frame my day, clear my mind, calm my nervous system, and it gives me the energy and the mental clarity that I need to be more productive, more creative, and more impactful in the work that I do. So as you can probably guess, a lot of this boils down to self-care, right? I know you've heard it. It's a total buzzword, and maybe you're even sick of hearing about it, but it's essential. Seriously, it should be prioritized on your to-do list at least weekly, if not daily. And maybe that looks like a brief time slot in the morning or in the evening, or maybe a mindful lunchtime, right? A mindful eating practice around lunch. Or maybe you get up every hour or two from your computer and just do a little stretch or a little breath work or something like that. And doing something just that small is an excellent place to start. And you can consider expanding upon that if it feels right? Or maybe it even looks like just taking like a half day once a week to really unplug and get in touch with yourself, your mind, your body, your soul, right? This dedicated time for restoration not only helps our body from using all our jet fuel and preventing burnout, but it also helps so many other areas of our health, because our stress hormones put such a huge strain on our other body systems, like I mentioned, because it basically steals resources from wherever it can. So by decreasing the effects of stress in our body, we're not just, centering and grounding and emphasizing the woo in our life, right? But we're also helping to balance our hormones, support our immune system, stabilize our mood, enhance our focus, boost our energy, deepen our sleep, and regulate our digestion. All of the things that we want and really need to run a successful business long term. So I invite you to examine how you can start using your fuel more efficiently instead of just burning it all damn day. It's literally polluting your body, and no one likes pollution. So as for now, that is a wrap, and I want to hear your thoughts on this episode. Are you deciding right now to turn off that switch? Are you dedicated to preserving your jet fuel and replenishing your vital nutrients? Hit me up on Instagram, send me a DM, or take a screenshot of you listening and tag me at WELLthyWoman_. Otherwise, tune in next week where I will talk with you about handling the holidays, travel, and stress. All right? Chat with you next week. All right, ladies, thank you for listening to another transformational episode. If you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? My mission is to help inspire and empower women to share their gifts, better serve their clients, and show up even more for the people they love. So if you enjoyed this episode, leave an awesome review so more women can find us and join us in creating a life of wealth.